Last few weeks we've been in Psalm 23, and I know that it's probably this screen is more accurate than those screens up there. It says in the valley, but we're actually at the table today, so we've gone out of the valley. Most of you have probably heard the challenge that I have. We've got 2 more sermons left in this series. Okay, so bear with me. I hope that you're being encouraged. I hope that you're being challenged. But we got a couple more sermons before that we leave Psalm 23, and then as you've seen in your bulletin, we're going to be facing some giants that you and I face on a regular basis, but encouraging you. This is a great time. In 3 Sundays, we're going to start this. Our teenagers are working on something really neat as a presentation for this sermon series. They've been working on that on Wednesday nights and what it looks like to fight battles. And so they're going to have a visual thing that they're going to present to you in a couple of weeks. Hopefully, our youth leaders are kind of crossing their fingers. You know, they're thinking. So, Raylina, you guys are you guys confident? You're confident? Okay, you're good. You're good. Great. So we've been in Psalm 23. The first sermon, if you had missed out on it, really what it is, what we focused in on was God as our shepherd. God is our shepherd and we can trust him. And we also identified as sheep, which I know that it's kind of difficult, to identify. I showed sheep as a kid, and yesterday, family and I walked through some stock show barns yesterday, and it was just smelly whenever we went through the sheep barn. And I was reminded as I smelt that smell, I was reminded of Psalm 23. It's not always easy being a sheep. I don't remember who it was last week that they came up to me and they said, you know what? I just have a hard time identifying as a sheep. I mean, I'm okay with identifying as cattle, but sheep, they're just dumb. Who was it that told me that last week? I don't know who it was. There's Gary Matley? Yeah, okay. Missing him this morning. Anyway, and then the next week we went from God as our shepherd to God as our shepherd leads us through the valley sometimes. And whenever we hear that at funerals sometimes, yea, though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, we think that is kind of only simply as a funeral verse. But the truth be told is that you and I walk through the darkest valley sometimes in this life. Sometimes it feels like that there is hardly any light at all, and we can't see the light that is before us. And so, but the truth is that even though that you walk through the valley, that your shepherd is with you and you can trust him. And the only thing you need to be is sheep. And so today, we're going to move on just a little bit further. We're going to move to Psalm 23, 5a. Just a little bit before everybody can see that. It says, you prepare a table before me. So we move from the valley to the table, okay? So I got some good news for you this morning. You prepare a table before me in the presence of my enemies. Here's the good news. That I end this allegorical David psalm, that he moves from shepherd to you being the sheep, your identity kind of shifts a little bit, okay? Because how many of you here ever were invited to a meal with sheep at the table? I would be a little bit concerned. I would be super concerned if I got invited over to Quentin and Daly's new home. It's fairly new. I mean, you guys have lived there. But in their dining area, as you kind of walk in, and they're prepared a meal, and then there are not just human guests, but there's also sheep at the table too. But really what it amounts to is that it's good news, because I don't think that God, whenever he invites us, whenever we discover that God is our shepherd and we identify as his sheep, he doesn't just look at us as just mere animals. He invites us to a table and he wants you to sit. And not only that, he wants you to dine. So here's part of the issue. You heard tonight as Bob stood up as they've got a great facility as they are organizing it and developing it. There was an invitation for you guys. There's hamburgers and hot dogs there. You guys know what the course is. You guys know where it's at. Most of you might know where it's at, right? I think really what it amounts to is whether or not that we're going to accept the invitation. And so what I wanted you guys to recognize today is that although the invitation is there, God always is inviting. God is always inviting to the table. And it's on our part. I was talking today with Frankie and Cherie, kind of this, there was a lot more people in Sunday school this morning, but I just had this conversation with them. I said, I think I wrestle with this whole thought between Jesus take the wheel or Jesus as my co-pilot. I wrestle in between there. I mean, if I throw my hands off and I start Carrie Underwooding it, Jesus take the wheel, what's going to happen is if I'm driving down Highway 33, chances are Jesus is not going to take the wheel. I'm going to run into some semi or some other kook like me that drives down that road. And then there's this idea that Jesus is my co-pilot. And then I think that there's probably a little bit of both, that I don't want to have so much control over the steering wheel of my life, this direction of my life. I don't want to have so much control over that Jesus can't at least direct my path. So I think that there is a little bit of in between. There's an invitation to the table. There's this invitation as if that Jesus is saying, I want to be a part of your life. And not just part of it, I want to direct your path. You still got your hand on the steering wheel. You can accept the invitation and you can come. Can I talk a little bit about that? This accepting of the invitation to this table. Now, if you are 35 years and younger, we'll say 36 years and younger, okay? You are identified in our culture as a millennial, okay? Sorry if you missed the mark. And I don't know who you are above us. But here's this snapshot. If you are, there's a few of you that are in that sweet spot of considered to be millennials, okay? So say for instance that I'm going to have a dinner party. And what I will do is that I will get on Facebook and I'll create an invitation to join my dinner party. Okay, and I send you the invitation. So there are a few options whenever you receive that invitation on Facebook. There is, yes, I'm going. No, I'm not going. And what's the other one? Maybe, yeah, maybe. And there's even probably a fourth option. You'll have the invitation and it's, I'm interested. I won't say maybe or yes or no. And so if you've ever done this on Facebook and you reach out to millennials and you say, hey, I need an RSVP. I don't know, anybody getting married anytime soon? Let me tell you something. If you send invitations to millennials and you expect an RSVP, you might be in a sour surprise. They might not respond to you. Fish or chicken? Steak or chicken? I don't know, whatever's best, whatever's being served the best that day. So most of the time as millennials, what we'll do is, and I'm talking about myself, what will end up happening, we'll get an invitation and we will say, maybe. I don't know. Because here's a part of what we deal with internally. And maybe it spreads a little bit further off. Maybe we are so influential as millennials then maybe it spreads over to other generations. So help me. You're my test subject this morning, okay? Help me. If you receive the invitation, have you ever said maybe or interested? Anybody here that is not millennials? Okay. Okay, thank you. Thank you. So we've got, you're just right on the cusp, Crispy. Crispy is on the cusp. You're past the curve, huh? So here's what we wrestle with. We wrestle with one, commitment. We deal with commitment issues, okay? Now, it might not say that we would never marry anybody because we love that commitment. We love close-knit relationships as far as that. We love family as far as that's concerned. And we commit to family and those tight-knit relationships. But as far as events, we have a hard time committing to it. How many in here would just say, that I'm a millennial? And let me tell you something, this is truth. As far as my attendance to as church is concerned, I would say maybe, unless the weather is good, unless that there's some other event going on. I attend church. Trust me, I attend church. But let me tell you, if the weather is right and if there is something else going on that is better, I might be going to that. And this is just kind of across the board for any type of party. I'm telling you what, I'm birthday partied out at the moment, okay? I love birthday parties. I love celebrating it. But if somebody invites me tomorrow to a birthday party on Facebook, I'm going to say, maybe. And maybe meaning like if nothing else better is going on at the time, right? So commitment, not only that, but also we want to keep our options open. We want to keep our options open. So we say this is very simple, very basic. Accept the invitation to the table. But it's not just that simple. It becomes very complex because if you deal with commitment issues, we can say, yeah, I came to the altar one time. Yeah, I got prayed for. I prayed the prayer before. Or just simply that, could you just recognize this? That in our life, there are other tables. And for that matter, there are other hosts. And so if I accept the invitation to the table, if I accept this invitation, although that it's a great exception, or it's a great invitation, you know that there are other hosts out there besides you, Jesus. There are other tables that are serving something different. You know, I do like the option to maybe go to a different table, and it might seem as if, I like the cardboard cutout of Jesus. It might look like Jesus as the host, but it's a fabrication of something, because I like what this cardboard cutout of Jesus is serving on his table. It doesn't look like accountability. It doesn't look like a life of repentance. It doesn't look like a life that is geared towards, I am aiming in a direction that looks like heaven. I like the cardboard cutout that looks like that I can go aimless. I like the cardboard cutout of Jesus, though that it might look like that he's there, it might seem like that I can stay the way that I am. There's no accountability. I can live free. I can live in the way that I want to go and the direction that I want to go. This cardboard Jesus. This invitation that Jesus invites us to in this particular table is something a little bit different. The difference is that he sits at the table and he's a gracious host. He is a gracious host, and he's the one that prepares the table. He's the one that sets the agenda, and he's the one that offers the meal at the table. And the meal that's at the table is delicious, it's nutritious, and truth be told, sometimes it's fish and it's bread. And for some of us, we say, well, fish is a dying man's game or a weak man's game. I want steak, Jesus. I'm not necessarily interested in what you're serving up today. Sorry about that, guys. And so whenever we accept the invitation, I think that there is this cycle that ends up happening whenever we accept the invitation to sit at his table, is that sometimes we wrestle with trusting that God will provide at his table. I don't know if fish and bread, I don't know if fish or bread and juice is actually going to sustain me. And for that matter, those of you that are gluten-free like myself, I need a gluten-free option. I'm not necessarily certain, because there are other invitations out there and it's probably more entertaining, but I can tell you what, at the time, it tastes good. What Jesus is offering is something that is sustaining, something that will fill you up, something that will satisfy you. And the truth is that we accept the invitations to other, because we don't trust what Jesus is. We don't trust that it's going to be fun. We don't trust that it's going to be nourishing. We don't trust that it's going to supply what we think that our need is. So we go back to the cardboard cutout invitation. And so this allegory that we find, this allegorical conversation that David has with God and himself in Psalm 23, where it starts with saying, the Lord is my shepherd, I lack nothing. I absolutely lack nothing. Where it goes to this idea of he's remembering the time in which the Israelite people are in captivity. And God brings them out through the valley of the darkest shadows, in which as they are being brought out of captivity, they go to this place in which that is the Red Sea, and they don't know what's going to happen. And what ends up happening is that God splits the Red Sea, and they walk on dry land, and there is water on this side and water on this side, and they are literally going through the valley. They're going through the valley as their enemies are coming, they're hounding them, they are coming behind them. And we learned last week is that God responded to them and he says, listen, just sit back and watch. I'm going to overcome your enemies. You just trust me, you just follow me, and I'm going to overcome your enemy. And then guess what happens? They walk through the valley. And what ends up happening behind them is that the Red Sea devours them and they're drowning. And where do they find themselves? After they pass through the Red Sea, they find themselves in the desert. And they're looking around in the desolate desert. They're looking around and they're finding no nourishment. And they're grumbling. It says in Psalm, a psalmist writes this. He writes this, watch this. In Psalm 78:19, it says, they spoke against God. They said, can God really spread a table? Where? In the wilderness. They're in the desert. And what they don't believe as far as trusting God, they don't believe that in the wilderness that God can actually give them anything. They're looking at their circumstance, they're looking at their surroundings, and they're saying, God, can you really spread a table? Can you really nourish me? And you know what ends up happening? Even in the desert, to where it looks like that there's no water, there's no food, there's nothing. It's desert. It's wilderness. God rains down manna from heaven. He says this, he says, I will rain down bread from heaven for you. Exodus 16:4 says that. I often wonder that even though we walk through the valley of the shadow of death, and sometimes we come out on the other end of it, and we trust our shepherd that he's going to lead us to greener pastures, and whenever we come over there and it's nothing but desert, we got out of it and we say, thank you, Lord, for this. And you ask yourself, can God really prepare a table for me in the desert? Do I really feel like that I can be nourished? I'm looking at my circumstances right now. I've gone through seasons in my life where I feel like, God, you're gone. I can't see you, and for that matter, you've left me here. You left me here in the desert. You left me here, and I just cannot find any sense of nourishment. I feel like I'm having to fend for myself. And here's my response. Where you led me out of, back there in slavery, at least I had a table. At least I had food. At least the people that I was slave under would at least feed me. At least whenever I was slave to them, they would give me chicken, soup, something warm to feed my tummy. Oh, I kept on having to depend upon them. I kept on having to go back to them. I was so dependent upon them. But at least they took care of me because right now, my surrounding is, I'm hungry. Right now, I'm looking around me and it does not look like an oasis. You led me through here, God. Why did you lead me here? And I want you to recognize that it is God that leads us. Whenever we trust the shepherd, sometimes the feeling, the emotion is not going to be heightened awareness. I love it. I love it whenever we come here on Sunday morning and we're clapping hands and we're praising God and we're testifying to God. But the truth is that I believe that there are people here that come on a regular basis and sometimes are squelched by the sun and by the circumstances, that they get so squelched by it and they're just saying, I'm in the wilderness, and can God really provide for me while I'm in the wilderness? I need to be back there. I need to go back. But God can spread a table, because here's the thing. God is bigger than your circumstance. God is bigger than what you're seeing with your own two eyes. God is bigger than your temporary satisfaction to fulfill this hunger. And I'm not just talking spiritually or physically. I'm talking spiritually as well. Because I believe, again, this cycle that we are constantly in faith is all about this. Very, very simple. The foundation of a relationship with God is built on trust. God does everything in His power to let you see that you can trust Him. Even in the desert, if you would just simply allow Him to nourish you. Can He really, let me ask you the question, can He really prepare a table for you in your desert? Can He really spread a table and you have an invitation for you to come to Him? I guess really the question simply is, will I trust? Will I really trust? Here's the thing. I know that it's a 3-word sentence. And it might seem really simple, but it's not that simple, is it? I mean, if we were really honest with ourselves, if we could say, you know what, I trust you, God. There's some of us that's got this down pat. I've heard the teaching about the 10% tithe. We've got this really good down and pat. I will easily give my 10% and think nothing about it. God, you got this. I've become almost mechanical in it. This is easy for me. Let me tell you something. That part's easy for me. But whenever I'm facing sickness, or whenever something is happening, whenever my enemies are surrounding me, can I really trust that God is going to defend me? Can I really trust that God is going to be my defender and be my shepherd? Whenever, what I could do is that I could just find some people and I could build my case. And whoever my enemy is, I could build my case and I can get some great teammates on my side. Hey, did you know that so-and-so was a no good, sorry? You know what they said about me? Can you believe that? Can you believe that they would do that to me? You know what? I think that you should think that they're a no good, sorry. And you should tell other people too. Should I really trust that God is going to be defending me in the midst of all that? Because here's what the psalmist says whenever he says, you prepare a table for me. You prepare a table in the midst of my enemies. I can tell you what, the only way that I can identify with this, the only snapshot of picture that I can find that is even closely related to this. Whenever my brother and cousin played baseball for OSU, there's Bedlam at Bricktown. And if you go and you're a fan, I'm an OSU fan. I got to cheer for my brother and my cousin. But if I'm watching Bedlam and if I'm at Bricktown in the midst of that game and I go to the hot dog stand on the wrong side of the stadium, I feel like that my enemies are surrounding me. That's as close as far as what I can think of as far as preparing a table for me in the midst surrounding your enemies. Let me tell you, my Boomer Sooner brothers and sisters, you're not my enemies. I sometimes have to recognize, sometimes the enemy's not our enemy. We make enemies out of people that are not our enemies, don't we? But here's the thing. The invitation to accept to God's table, you get God's protection. You get God's invitation and He can sustain you. So if I'm sitting at the master's table and I'm dining, I can be relaxed. Sometimes the table, you have to be relaxed, okay? Sometimes, if I'm around and my enemies are around me, if I'm unfamiliar territory, forgive me, God, I know this is your table, okay? But I'm like this. I can't relax. I can't enjoy my meal. And so what the invitation requires is for you to trust the shepherd is going to provide for you and protect you. I can sit at God's table and the enemies can be surrounding me, but you want to know something? They can't touch me. They can surround me. They might have weapons in their hand, but I can tell you the weapons are not going to overcome you. Because where you're sitting and who the host is. It reminds us in Scripture that no weapon formed against us will prosper. So can you trust? Will you trust? So we can accept the invitation. We can trust that God will provide at this table, but here's the tough question. Are we going to eat and drink? I think that we're fans of the table, and this is really what we wrestle with. We wrestle with commitments, but sometimes, again, let me just reiterate, sometimes that there's other invitations out there. There's other invitations for us to identify with a different kingdom. I can tell you, my worship looks completely different on Saturday night with college football. And let me tell you what it is. Or even Friday night football. My worship looks completely different than what it does on Sunday morning. You know, we identify Sunday morning as like a catalyst of a recognition of where our relationship is with God. But God invites us to dine 7 days a week. So eat and drink. He's not asking you. I got this table over here, and it's been here for a while, and I'm just kind of visualizing, you guys got to see another table other than the one that's prepared before you. Because this is the invitation. He wants you to sit, and he wants you to stay, and he wants you to dine, he wants you to eat, and he wants you to drink. You know how rude it is? You know how rude it is in this particular culture for us? I don't know. Let me ask you this. Have you ever had anybody invite you over to dinner and you say this? I don't know, what you fixing? I've had it happen to me. I don't know, what are you fixing? It's almost like I'm weighing my options. Is my company not good enough? Broccoli cheese soup. Some of you might be interested in that. Some of you might not. You know, we said this morning, if I'm fasting, I'm baking asparagus. Anybody interested in coming to my house? Have some asparagus. If it was bacon wrapped, I bet you guys would come. But sometimes we wonder. We come to this table, and should it be a surprise to you what the table as we come together? Could it be a surprise to you that it's bread and juice? Would it all be a surprise to you if I had a Big Mac and fries? I mean, seriously. Would it be a surprise to you that it is bread and juice? Because here's the thing, this is what it represents, this table. What this represents is it represents crucified Christ. It represents sacrifice. It represents what was bought and what was paid for what you and I could not do. Our this last week or our past, bought for, paid for. And you want to know what? There's nothing that you can do about it except the invitation to come and dine. You know what I'm serving up, Jesus says? I'm serving up grace. I'm serving up mercy. You know, you can go on this table over here and you can worship, and it might be Big Mac and fries, but I'll tell you what's not going to sustain you. It might be excitement, it might be exhilaration, it might get your endorphins up high. It might be pills, it might be alcohol related, it might be sex related, it might be materialism, it might be fandom. But I can tell you whatever is being served at a table that Jesus doesn't, it will not sustain you. And you'll be unsatisfied and you'll keep on going back to it over and over again. Just like the Israelite people, as they cross the Red Sea and they get into the desert, they keep on looking back. At least they serve Big Mac and fries. At least what they were serving is that it sustained me. And God's saying, stay at the table. You don't see what's ahead just yet. I'm going to write a great story for you. I'm going to give you grace and mercy, and people are going to come to you because you're so blessed and you're full of love and grace and mercy. You're going to become the oasis in the desert. You're going to be the one in which that you're going to be serving grace and mercy, because grace and mercy has your cup overflowing. Can you guys just do me a favor? Oh, thank goodness. Psalm 23. Just go there. I don't have it up here on the screen for you, but I know people hate it whenever other ministers, but I say, God, you're doing something right here, okay? Psalm 23:5. You set a table before me right in front of my enemies, is the way my version says. And last but not least, listen to this. You bathe my head in oil, and my cup is so filled, it spills over. And you say, well, say when? I mean, if you're the host, stop spilling it over. Let me tell you, that spillover is for other people as well. That spillover is just not for you. Just your cup overflows. The other day I was pouring pop for my kids, and it fizzed over, and I got to see it run over, and I wanted to go, because that pop was not meant for me. It was meant for them, but the spillover was for me. So if your cup overfloweth today, that's not just for you, that's for somebody else. Get out of here. If your cup overflows, it's for somebody else. That's not just for you. Sorry. I'm not sorry. But what this table represents is a time in which it's going to sustain you, and you can come and you can accept the invitation, and just because that you leave this table, it goes with you. The reason why that it's an invitation for you just to partake in it, to put it in your mouth, is so it goes with you. We don't believe in anything like mysterious or anything like that about communion. But Scripture directs us to this table. Obviously, it's not just on a Sunday morning ritualistic thing. It's an invitation to His table for you to come and dine. Will you trust Him? Will you trust that this is going to sustain you? And I'm not just saying this is enough. I'm saying, you've called me. You've filled me up. My cup overflows, and it's for somebody else as well. Dusty, would you mind? Got this bowl here, and I'm wondering if you would just stand right there in front. And what we're going to do today is Dusty's going to help me. And so what I'm going to invite you to do is that we're going to come and dine together. And so listen very carefully, okay? I don't want you to be ever embarrassed. And so if you have questions, I'm sorry, I'm going to try to communicate this as best as possible. We invite you to come, you yourself, okay? This is a representation of you accepting the invitation. Sometimes whenever we do communion, our ushers will come to you, right? And we'll give you, okay? This is a different way in which that we're doing. We're just simply in a posture of worship. You're accepting the invitation by getting out of your seat and you're coming. It's just a posture of worship, okay? It doesn't really mean anything unless that you make it. Be intentional about it. And so as you come, I want you just to simply just cup your hands. You kids, can you do this? Levi, can you do this? Just cup your hands. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to break a piece of bread off, and I'm just going to put it in your hand, okay? And simply what it is nothing that you do is except for you just bring your own hands. As if that I've accepted the invitation, and Jesus does the rest of the work. I'm going to place it in your hand, and what you're going to do is that you're going to come over here to Dusty, and Dusty's going to say the body of Jesus Christ, and he's going to dip it in. You're going to dip it in. You're not going to do that for him. Don't take them hand like that. Just on your own free, just take the piece and just dip it into this, okay? It's an invitation. And so there's a song that's going to be played. It's a song called Come to the Table. And I want you to respond whenever that you're ready. If you'd like to, after that you partake, if you'd like to come find a place to pray, that's great. And it's just, again, simply a place that you come pray. Maybe it's a time in which you say, you know what, I need to recognize, I've been dining at other places. No, I believe God. I believe Jesus died for my sin. But as far as, Monday through Saturdays is concerned, I'm looking for other tables. I'm looking for the better invitation. I'm looking for something that's better. And for that matter, some of us look for the better host. Maybe just some of us just say, I just want to be sustained. I want to be satisfied. I feel like that I'm going aimless. I feel like that I'm grasping at things that are just not. I feel like I'm in the desert and I want to go back. I feel like wherever God's led me here is just, I'm just looking around and there's no map. There's no place, no direction. Maybe that's you. We want to pray for you, want to give you space for you to worship God and to respond to the word that we've just heard today. So would you come? The day that Jesus was